Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder, and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. Welcome to episode 21 of the Oracle Scroll. Today, we are going to talk to and about the moon, card number 18 in the deck. And we're going to explore what the moon represents and why it's so necessary in our lives. We often tend to overlook it and overlook its influence. And then we're going to discuss a little bit about the language of the tarot and how it speaks to us in today's world. And then in the final segment, we will take a question from Linda regarding her employment opportunities, and we will see how we can help her with some information drawn from the cards. So we'll jump right into the moon. I've always thought that the moon was a bit misunderstood at times. Due to the fact that some of the traditional meanings seem to give her more of a negative kind of slant, that it's a vision obscured because there is no light. So it's a little different, but I find the moon to be a very positive influence. And this is what I wrote about the moon in my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards. The moon is a member of the major arcana family and has a great deal to say about the real question at hand. Often, what seems to be the obvious issue is just a symptom of something deeper which needs to be resolved. I find that the use of the tarot is much less about finding answers to life's questions and more about redirecting our perceptions and assisting us in redefining our questions. The finality of receiving an answer will often discourage further investigation, and you can shut down creativity, while a shift in perception can help us to refocus on the real issues and the goals so that we remain open to new possibilities. Traditionally, the moon is thought to represent obscured vision, not seeing the issue clearly, but when one looks closely at the effects of moonlight, it can change our appreciation for this card. If you look out your window in the daylight, you can clearly see all the major components of your landscape. But the abundance of light may keep you from noticing some of the more minute details. So it is with moonlight. The scene will look completely different in the reduced light and shadows, and they will appear where none existed before. But once acclimated to the lower light level, you begin to notice new details in those shadows. Appreciate the moon, for it may lead you to answers you may have overlooked in the bright light of day. Your best directions may lie in those shadows. The artwork for this card in the Robin Wood deck shows the moon dominating the background while a wolf and a dog howl in the foreground. This alludes to the uneasiness we often feel in the dark, but points to the fact that life is still going on and flourishing in that same dark. Since for most of us, nighttime is considered our downtime and time for sleep, we sometimes fail to realize just how active this nocturnal world can be. Life goes on no matter what the light level, and some of our fellow creatures thrive in the shadows cast by moonlight. When I see the moon appear in a reading, I immediately think that the querent needs to spend some time getting to know their own environment more intimately. They need to take the time to see how their life and situation looks in the shadows and moods of moonlight. We are often so used to all the stimuli around us, the activity and the sounds that are part of our modern world, that we fail to take time to be alone in silence and in darkness and to look into our own shadows. Very often, the noise of modern life completely overwhelms the softer sounds of our intuition and the guidance coming to us from the higher self. The moon encourages us to slip away from the turmoil and allow our minds the peace and quiet necessary for true introspection. So, as with all the cards, there are some questions to be answered. How has the dreamy energy of the moon influenced your life in the past? How do you relate to the energy of the moon? And lastly, do you regularly spend time in meditation and introspection? And that is my take on the moon, as presented in my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards, available now on Amazon.com in both paperback and Kindle versions. As we've done with all the cards so far, we're going to spend a few moments just listening to the moon speak about the energy and the power that is the moon. Good day, friends. I am card number 18 in the major arcana of the tarot, and I exert a great deal of energy, much like my namesake, the moon. In order to understand me as a card and the power that I possess and the sometimes subtle energy I offer, we have to understand the moon herself. I identify the lunar energy as feminine, but throughout history, even though there have been many moon goddesses, there have been some moon gods as well. But overall, my energy is regarded as feminine. As a deity, the sun was revered and deified much earlier than myself as the moon, most likely because my energies are much more subtle and mysterious. As we humans are more inclined to use daylight hours for our work, we tend to forget that the nocturnal world I reign over is always in motion. I will do my best to seduce you into stepping into this realm to explore your deepest and darkest secrets. Even into modern times, science has struggled to understand the effects I produce in relation to water and all forms of life, including humans. I tend to be rather quiet in my approach and often don't leave many clues as to my intent. But I am responsible for cycles of all kinds in the human field. I have a great deal of influence in the breeding and birthing cycles of all the animals in the barn, and I extend that energy to my human family as well. What I do to the tides of this Earth's oceans is legendary and very predictable. Ask anyone who works with people in retail or law enforcement or any other public field. They will tell you that when my phase reaches full, many strange behaviors and reactions can be expected. I wield a tremendous power without ever shouting, without ever glaring. I simply watch over the night in quiet reflection and introspection. In the tarot, I am often depicted with a wolf and a hound baying in my general direction, alluding to the fact that my energies stir primal responses in every animal they touch. In the ancient tales of vampires and werewolves, my energy figures prominently in the nocturnal lives of these undead beings. I tend to view the world through a veil, which can shift perception or cause one to see from a different perspective. Just imagine how many romantic moments would be completely lost without me. How many love songs would be rendered meaningless without my influence. In fact, I am romanticized everywhere. Everywhere you look, you can see my likeness appear on food, personal care products, even pencils. Oh, and the list goes on. It's endless. Just mention my name, and almost every single person you speak to will have a frame of reference and some emotional reaction as they recall a particular moon experience. I'm constantly in motion. Every night I shift my appearance. Whether I be waxing or waning, I am always cycling reliably. That's why I was man's first timekeeper, and nearly all ancient calendars are based solely on my movements and cycles. I have come to represent all that shifts on a regular basis, such as the seasons and reproductive cycles. I have been the motivating factor for many a farmer seeking to optimize the ultimate harvest. My energy urges us to examine each piece of evidence carefully, using not only our sense of sight, but more importantly, our intuition as well. If I seem to be looking at my world through a veil, it is only to encourage you to focus and open to the many possibilities that are available. While working with less intense light and adapting our vision to the new levels of awareness, we learn a lot about ourselves and our own world. Everything I reveal has always been right there. But the glare of intense light makes it easy to overlook the essence of their existence. I reveal so much to the seeker with my quiet, reflective light. I encourage everyone to consider how bringing their situation into sharper focus enhances their appreciation and acceptance of the situation. Oh yeah, I can sometimes be a bit of a trickster, and I can cause some anxiety by showing a shadow meaning which is out of alignment with a commonly held belief. So be selective when viewing my realm, as it can hide many obstacles in those shadows. I am so predictable, I think of myself as a prophetess. Astronomers and astrologers have for centuries been able to predict my phases and eclipses. And using my regular schedule of moon phases, they can predict tidal movements far into the future. Like all my colleagues here in the major arcana, I do deliver warnings as well. The first is to turn away from fear of any sort. Humans have a habit of reacting with fear anytime they're placed in an unfamiliar situation, such as my realm, my dark realm. I'm here to warn that such irrational fear of all that is unknown will stand in the way of any spiritual or emotional growth. So leave the fears behind. Take a moment to allow your eyes to acclimate to the new light level and proceed with confidence. Numerologically, my number 18 adds up to a 9. And the other 9 in the major arcana is the Hermit. We have a lot in common. We both encourage self-reliance and introspection, using every one of our senses, including intuition, to find the answers to all our most complex questions and quandaries. The next time you find yourself gazing at the moon, the full moon perhaps, remember what you have learned today about our special relationship. I am here to encourage and direct with a very light touch. I have much to reveal, but you may not be quite ready to see it all just yet. So we'll need to visit several times and pull back the veil a little further each time. Come, play in my nocturnal world and learn to appreciate how filters can change our perception. Meditate on my power and subtle energies to bring those same powers back home to yourself. invite me to your nocturnal world, and let's work together on those tough questions which remain. So I hope that some part of what I've said today will help you understand my work and my power on a new level. And I thank you for having me come to speak with you today. And I hope to see you in a reading very soon. And that, my friends, is a close and intimate look at the moon. In the second segment of the Oracle Scroll, we take something that is of current interest and apply a spiritual meaning to it. Today, I think we're doing a little tarot overload because I'm going to talk a little bit about the language of the tarot and how the cards actually do speak to us. So, this is what I jotted down about the language of the tarot. In a recent online forum, someone brought up the language of tarot as a discussion topic. When we talk about the language of tarot, we are not referring to a foreign system of letters and vocabulary, but rather we're noting the symbolism and art of the cards. This is what constitutes the language of the tarot. Some decks rely heavily on color as an aspect of their language, while others may draw on classic impressions of the meanings originally given to the cards by the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. As you explore various decks, you will find that some employ a fully illustrated scene for each card, while others only illustrate the major arcana cards, while the numeral cards receive minimal artistic embellishment. They basically just have the symbols of each suit. Have you ever known someone who had a natural musical talent, someone who played by ear? That's the best way to illustrate this language. Developing our natural intuitive nature will be much more fulfilling than using a memorized set of meanings. So basically what I'm saying is using the cards as tools rather than just reading the story from them will often yield better results. We've explored already basics of the tarot and the meanings of some of the various cards. We've been through several of them already, which can serve as a guide to expanding our understanding of each card. As we continue to explore the available decks, and there are many of them, then we find that there are many variations of meanings and nuance, and at times some will seem to conflict or contradict the standard meaning that's kind of become accepted that's been assigned to a particular card. Each artist, each author takes a very subjective view of the tarot and assigns their own impression to the cards as they perceive and intuit them. This makes the art of reading the tarot very fluid and constantly expanding. It's a field that is growing every day. Just when you think you finally have a meaning for a certain card, along comes a new perception and causes us to question our conviction about that meaning. When I teach a class on the tarot, I make very clear to my students that what we are learning is a way of reading the tarot, absolutely not the way. In fact, I don't believe in such a thing as the way. I want each reader to keep an open mind and feel the message of the cards before them each time they pick up the deck. It's relatively easy to learn by rote a group of meanings which will get you through, but at the same time you'll be missing an incredible amount of information which is inherent in the artwork. Now, in the Rider-Waite-Smith style of tarot deck, we often find several variations of meanings, even though there are some basic underpinnings which nudge us in the right direction. Some variations may even change the mood of the card from one of warning or challenge to one of reassurance and well-being. Whenever I'm faced with such divergent meanings in a card, I will always opt for the meaning being displayed by the card rather than the standard meaning. If you understand what I just said there, sometimes all the learning that we have done can be put aside because you're getting the message directly and your intuition should take over. Another big consideration is the cards which surround the one you are reading. Do they support the meaning you have learned, or are they more in line with the meaning you're picking up intuitively from the art or the color of the card? Just as you were taught in grammar school, always go with your first hunch. That's a number one lesson in first grade. My advice to all students, all my students at least, is never become so dependent on learned meanings that you miss what the card is actually saying to you. If you can keep the intuitive conversation between you and your cards flowing, you will be far ahead of someone who only knows the standard meanings. So that's the language of the tarot, and the language of the tarot requires us to listen, and listen carefully with our intuitive ear as we begin to understand what we're being taught. As a bonus segment for today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my absolute favorite trees in the Northwest, and it's the madonna tree. They're very common. I don't remember seeing them elsewhere in the country. Certainly they weren't in the Midwest. They are coastal and they are evergreen. They keep their leaves, and they're just such a stunning appearing tree. They are gnarled. Their bark peels away to reveal a beautiful skin underneath. They are something quite special. And this is what I wrote about them. I have always enjoyed finding these regal trees with their bent and twisted trunks shaped by the wind and storms of our area. The peeling bark, which reveals the inner beauty of the tree, is another favorite feature. The fact that they are a broadleaf evergreen is also very unusual. I have learned that these trees are indigenous to the West Coast from British Columbia to California. In California, they're known as madrone, M-A-D-R-O-N-E, and the Canadians tend to be a bit more literal, using the Latin arbutus to identify them. Though they seem to cling to absolutely nothing on a rocky cliff, they actually put down very deep roots to reach water. This makes them rather difficult to transplant, and unless they are moved at a very young age, they often never recover from having their roots disturbed. The native people of our region held the madrona in high esteem, even granting it most sacred status among trees. The madrona produces a berry in summer, and this is a favorite food for many birds in the area. The bark and the leaves were used medicinally by the Native Americans of the region in treating wounds and diseases, especially diseases of the lungs, and the berries produced a narcotic effect, which also was used. The local tribes, like many other civilizations, have a flood myth that has been passed down for generations. Since fishing was an important part of their existence, their canoes were quite jealously guarded. According to their flood myth, their canoes were kept safe through the flood by being tied to a madrona tree, which held firm throughout the ordeal. Out of respect for this act of compassion, the madrona is never used for firewood. Another legend of the native people says that the roots of the madrona hold the earth together. I was so pleased to learn of the sacred nature of these majestic trees. I have often sat and wondered what they could tell us if we were only able to listen quietly enough to understand their stories. So, when you venture to the shore or to the islands, keep an eye out for the bronze beauty of the trunk of the madrona. And as you gaze upon its twisted and bent branches, imagine the story that it is telling you of the mighty winds and salty spray that have worked to make it appear the way it does today. In our third and final segment of the Oracle Scroll, we take a question from an audience member and we pull tarot cards to offer them some guidance. Today's question comes from Linda. And Linda says, "The new requirements for my dream job were just posted. I thought I was prepared to apply, but now I'm questioning my qualifications. What should I do?" Well, Linda, this is difficult. This happens all over. And I thank you for your question. So, first off, I drew 3 cards for you. They are the Star, the Hierophant, and finally the Queen of Cups. Now, the first card, the Star, recognizes that this is a dream that you've had for some time. You have known for years what is required for this position, and you've been preparing yourself to move up. And if I'm understanding your question correctly, I'm hearing you say that your employer has raised the bar and is now asking for degrees and certifications that you don't already have. The Star is the card of hope in the deck. So its clear message is that you should definitely apply and be prepared to defend your application. The second card, the Hierophant, stands up to defend those new requirements because he's very traditional in his approach. The Hierophant is here to say that while there is no substitute for formal education, you may have practical experience which can equate to the same recognition. The Hierophant admonishes that there may be a price to pay for this consideration, so weigh it carefully before making formal application. In other words, you may be offered less than someone else, and you'll need to decide if this is a fair trade for you. Don't worry about the employer. They're taking care of themselves. You are the one you have to make the decision about. The Queen of Cups, she steps in with some real heart-based analysis. She wants to know just how passionate you are about this position. She brings her energy to bear to help you identify a true passion as compared to a daydream. Is this a position you wish to keep until retirement, or is it a step in a particular direction? In summary, job requirements are posted as a means of weeding out applicants who do not possess the necessary skill set for the job. Sometimes degrees, certifications may be listed as requirements simply to discourage those less enthusiastic about seeking the position. Another way to see this situation is that this shift is meant to cause you to re-examine your desire for this position. Are the costs in time, energy, and money worth the advancement this position offers? Could your efforts be better directed toward a position which gives you more autonomy? Once you've had that conversation with yourself and you've decided to apply, be very truthful, but show your passion and dedication to the company and to this position. Wherever you see a deficiency, talk about a related certification or degree you do possess, or talk about your years of experience doing a similar job. I feel confident that you will go much further by showing your passion for the position, even if your academic qualifications seem to fall short in some areas. So, Linda, I hope that these cards have given you some timely advice, and I wish you luck, whichever way you choose to go. And thank you very much for your question. Thank you for joining us for this episode 21 of the Oracle Scroll. The Oracle Scroll is available on many of your favorite platforms, and we would ask that you please subscribe today. And you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and Facebook. You can become a patron of the Oracle Scroll by visiting our Patreon page. It's Patreon, patreon.com/Kevin Walder, and that will direct you into how you can support the Oracle Scroll while claiming some nice bonuses for yourself at the same time. Please send comments, suggestions, any requests to the Oracle's Scroll at gmail.com. And be sure to share your experience with your friends and relatives and anyone else who might enjoy what we do here at the Oracle Scroll. And as always, links to all the contact options, including the Patreon page that I mentioned above, will be listed in the accompanying notes that go with this audio presentation. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at the Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to the Oracle Scroll at gmail.com.